leadership is something for me. And I think now I have a different view on that. I think leadership is about others. It's not about self. And I think it's about being in that role of a leader to be able to have a greater impact on other people and really using and respecting that leadership role so that you can benefit others.
Welcome to Encouraging Leaders, a podcast that exists to remind CEOs and aspiring CEOs that you do not have to lead alone. I'm Mark DeBron, and today I am joined by a special friend and guest, Mark Lee. Mark has spent the last decade plus in the construction industry, but he's got decades of experience in leadership. And what I love about Mark is the cultures that I've witnessed that he has turned around and built. When I meet the teams on the floors where he has led, and they're engaged and they're active and they're growing, it's the kind of place that I fall in love with. The other thing is that every time I'm with Mark, I learn how to be a better leader. And so I know that's what you're here to listen to. And so I can't wait for this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's such an honor being here with you. And the words that you spoke apply very much to whenever I'm with you, I learn. And after my interaction with you, I always feel more energized and lifted and feel much more a part of a leadership community. And I know all the work that you are doing to lift others up. And just want to commend you for everything that you're doing. You're doing it from your heart, and that's why it's so impactful. So thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here with you.
It's so cool to be together. I know you're in the middle of transition and moving family down into a new state, but I want to start the same way I start with every president CEO. I want to talk about, in your leadership journey, when did you learn that you didn't have to hold that seat alone, that you didn't have to lead alone? Because leadership, I'll tell you, for me, sometimes it has felt like a lonely spot. And so where did you learn that you didn't have to do it all alone?
Yeah, I would say for me, it goes way, way back. I think my dad was so good at creating a vision. Mind you, my dad did not have a high school diploma, yet he was such a great vision caster. We immigrated from Korea. My dad didn't speak the language. He didn't speak English very well, but we would be oftentimes driving in his car and it would be the two of us. And he would try to cast a vision for the types of things I could accomplish in the future. And so I remember how he was so instrumental in laying this foundation around being able to envision a future and then creating a pathway to it. And so even in college, I really sought out to take on leadership roles. And I went to Michigan State University, big college, 50,000 students, massive campus. But I found a really great group of student leaders that published the biggest magazine in the U.S. amongst college. It was called Market Line, and we had wide distribution. And so I joined that club wanting to learn more about how organizations functioned. And just through involvement, was able to make it to the top spot of publisher. And 75 students trying to fulfill this mission of creating great content, sharing that content, and getting more students involved in leadership as well as understanding what businesses are all about. So, trying to lead 75 other students and then also trying to create a magazine that everyone else would enjoy isn't something that you can do on your own, especially when that's not really your background. And so for me, it was really relying on the other key leaders in the organization. We had about a dozen of us that really led that organization. And we would meet regularly, coffee. And you remember in the college days, their time was a lot less absolute than in the working life. And so, a lot of meetings at 1 a.m. at Denny's, having a grand slam breakfast and just kind of pouring into one another. And I think that's when I really got to understand the value and importance of having other great leaders that pour into you, even though you may be the one where on the front page you're listed as the publisher. I think it's so important to have those others around.
It's so cool. It's so cool that very early in your life, you got to see and witness a leader setting vision and bringing you along. even when you were too young to, just basically working to show you through his actions and through his words and the
Hmm.
time together. And then you step into
Right.
this leadership role in college when many people are out doing other things, and get to be honored to serve that group. Yeah, I mean, definitely you couldn't do it alone. You can't publish a magazine by yourself. And so being able to think about how do you get together, when do you get together, whether it's at Denny's or wherever, and getting their ideas out there and making it theirs instead of yours.
That's
A
right.
really
Yeah.
cool story.
Well stated. I think the other, if I could, another experience from Michigan State, I was able to become a TA in my undergrad years. My junior year, I was a TA for an international marketing course, and my professor was, I would say, is one of those early on mentors. And he and I would have one-on-ones on a regular basis. And I was in his office one day, and he really taught me the lesson of how you leverage your leadership position to serve somebody else. And so I was in his office. It was my junior year, getting ready for the summer break. And he asked me, he said, Mark, what are you going to do this summer? Because I have a thought for you. And I said, well, Professor Thompson, I got an offer for an internship down in Detroit. It's an alcohol company, and I'm not as comfortable about an alcohol company, but it is an offer. However, there's this one company that I've been really pursuing, and it was a company I met because he had the global vice president of sales come in and present in our class, and I really fell in love with him, the corporate culture, and what they were about. A company called Dow Corning out of Midland, Michigan. And so I was calling them 2 to 3 times a day to try to see if I can get an internship for the summer, and but never able to get through to the recruiter. And so I shared that story with Professor Thompson, and Professor Thompson says, "Well, what's the name of the guy that you're trying to get a hold of, and do you know his number?" Of course, I knew his name and I had the number memorized because I was calling, 2 to 3 times a
Wow.
day.
Yeah.
I gave that info to Professor Thompson, and he was, hang on a second. And so he picks up the phone, and back then there were rotary dials, and he dials the number. Right, takes a little longer. He dials it, and you know, serendipity. Right, he gets through. Like all the times I tried, I couldn't get through, but Professor Thompson gets through. And so he says to, his name was Rick. Says, "Hey Rick, Professor Thompson here. I'm a professor here at Michigan State. I've done some work for you guys at Dow Corning around opportunity analysis with Professor Frank Bacon. You've got a great company there. Hey, I just want you to know I've got one of my top students in the office with me, and he would love to have an internship with you. And I just want you to know that if you don't take him, it would be a huge mistake." And he goes, "Okay, all right, okay, I'll let him know." He hangs up and he says, "Mark, you got the job."
Oh, that is so good. It's so good. I want to capture a couple of the pieces there, because one of the things is that you had set yourself up to be willing to be coachable or mentored. It's such a leadership trait, undervalued, and you were putting yourself in that position by saying, "This is a person I'm willing to listen to." The second one is that, the tenacity and persistence of, "I'm going to try as hard as I can without help, so that when help comes, they will know that I'm not going to let them down. I'm not going to," because he was extending his full reputation when
Yes.
he did that. And
Right.
that is such a powerful leadership lesson. We can't wait for just the help. We actually have to try to accomplish, and that is where help just shows up when you need it, and it
Yeah.
did. And then your willingness to accept that and then move in there. I did look back through your resume. Dow was where I started my career as well. I was only a few years behind you, and I just think about that. Hilarious that I didn't know that you started there. Now I get to hear the story of how. And
Right.
I got to start there as well as a co-op, and then as a full
Hmm.
time in chemical engineering about 95 and 95. So only about 6 years after you started full
Yeah.
time there.
Right.
Really cool.
Well,
Love
now
it.
we know how much younger you are than I am.
Huh? Maybe, yeah, right. We won't do the math exactly.
But yeah, so for me,
Such a cool story.
seeing someone in a position to be able to use that position to help somebody else, right? And because he didn't have to do that,
Yeah,
right?
no.
He could have just said, "Hey, try this or try that," but he really stepped into it. And I wouldn't say he was trying to take advantage of it. I think it was where he saw how he could help someone's journey, and that was my journey. And I think I had expressed to him how much I desired it. And so I think that's another valuable lesson sometimes, that, your leadership role is to help someone on their journey.
Yeah.
And
And he
he
was
was that
willing.
leader.
Yeah. Well, it's a great place to learn that leadership is not about, it's about serving others, and he was doing that
Yeah,
for you.
right.
So you had two
Exactly.
great examples there. If we move forward a little bit, I know you're getting ready to move your family to Dallas.
Mhm.
And when we were together last week, you were sharing how much you love to work on transformation. When you go into a plant or a business and you get the chance, an opportunity to move from one state to the other where people are thriving. Tell me, what do you love about that, and what do you think is key for that type of leadership, which is a unique leadership capability?
Yeah,
What do you love
I
about
think
it first?
what I love about the transformation isn't anything about me. None of it is ever about me. It's really about how can I help someone to improve or enjoy their life more. And it's as simple as that. We spend so much of our time, our waking moments, at work in a setting, and we, try to do our best. Yet oftentimes motivations for what you do at work can be misplaced. And so what I love to do is to just transform that portion of it, whether or not the business is doing well or not well. I think it's more about the engagement of the individuals of the organization into that organization. That's the part I love the most. And so, I never want to go in and say, you guys are all doing it wrong, or you're not enjoying what you're doing. That's not, I think that's judgmental. I don't mean that I'm judgmental. Like, wherever anyone is, to then try to help figure out, how do you make it better? Like, how do you make the business better, and how do you get engaged in helping the business to be better? And through that, you get something out of it too, right? You get to improve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that whole process. I love the understanding the as is, really getting to know it, and then caring about the as is. I think that's an important step. If you don't care about the as is, people see it right away and they're like, oh, you're doing this for yourself. You're not doing it because you appreciate the as is. You just want accolades for yourself. And I think it's important to let the people know that as you learn about them and about the organization and the business, that you actually care about it before you try to change anything. And so I love that whole process. I think there's a lot of great connections made through that.
Mm-hmm.
Developing relationships and connecting. Have one of the great leaders that I've been able to work with, Mark Tom, a friend of yours and a friend of mine,
Yeah.
always had a saying. He said, you can't influence without deep relationships.
Mm.
And, if your goal is to influence, you better make sure you have deep relationships built on trust to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hear so much wisdom there. When you walk in, I love the statement, you have to care for the as is. I haven't actually heard it stated that way, but they have to know, the people there that you're leading, they have to know that you care for the current state, the fact that they have been working hard and they have got it to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't say, hate everything about this and then let's go somewhere else. That doesn't
Right.
work. And
That doesn't
so
work.
getting to know them, getting to build relationships with them, and understanding that they see your appreciation for the current as is. What a beautiful way to state it. I literally haven't ever heard that before. And I do know Mark Tom very well, as everybody here on this call knows, and love him as a as
Yeah.
a coach and as a
Right.
friend. An
Right.
incredible leader. Getting to learn
Right.
from him has been incredible. But I think that's just a really cool way to think about a transformation. I'm not there as the savior of the bad. I'm there to
Right.
appreciate the as is and then paint a vision for the future and help us lead towards that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Otherwise, it's about you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
That's not leadership.
Yeah.
So
There was
yeah.
one story that you shared last week that I actually want to dive into for a moment. You were getting ready to reset offices in a role,
Hmm.
And you told me about how you did that. Can you share with our group how you did? Because I love the picture that you used.
Yeah, so this was at a company down in Fort Worth where I was hired to be the president of the company and kind of the fourth president. The three before me were family owners. And one of the things that I appreciated, I loved the culture, loved the people there, and yet I also appreciated the fact that there had to be some changes made. And it was really more about a culture of engagement and a culture of working together. And one of the things that I really wanted to change was the fact that a lot of people just worked in their office with doors closed. And I'm like, well, that's just showing up to work and then working by yourself and then going home. And so we built a strategy deck with everyone involved. In fact, the first 6 weeks of my job there, it was the leadership team that spent that whole 6 weeks in a conference room together instead of in our own individual offices. We built the strat deck, presented it to the mother company. They loved it. And so when we brought that back into the company, a lot of things had to change, but it had to be changed through engagement. It wasn't a top down approach at all. And so we said, we need more meeting spaces. We only have two, and with the work that's going on, those two are always full. We need more meeting spaces. And by the way, I am not a person that likes to separate leadership from frontline workers. And so I want more integration. And what happened was this was a kind of an old, office building where the mahogany paneled section, Mark, you'd been there,
Yeah.
was very separate, high ceilings, beautiful offices, and then the working sessions, very stark white walls, cubicles. And I said, that already separates kind of almost the haves and the have-nots. And that does not produce engagement. So we decided, hey, my office is so big. It's too big for one person. In fact, my office would be a fantastic conference room. And I started to kind of I didn't say it right away, but I just started to kind of say, hey, wouldn't these offices make great conference rooms? The chief operating officer had a similar size office. The VP of sales had a similar size office. And I'm like, these would be great conference rooms, wouldn't they? And they were trying to be nice and, kind of going along with it. But I said, at the end of the day, I want to be with you guys all the time. I want us to be a tight knit group. And I also think that we would work better if we had kind of the teams together. Like it was almost a culture where an office was like your domain.
Yeah.
You can't take that office away from me. Instead of a culture where an office was a place to meet and to work. And so I kind of proposed that we take our IT storage room and make that an office for the four executives. So myself, the COO, VP of finance, and the VP of sales and marketing. I said, let's make that one room, our office, the four of us. We'll take each a corner and put a desk in the middle where we can just turn our seats around and meet when there's an issue. We'll put a projection screen where we can share our computer. We'll do a lot of analysis together. And I think they were basically entertaining me and saying, yeah, that might be kind of cool. And the more we talked about it, the more they're like, yeah, we would be able to execute on our strategy much better if we kind of set that environment. And by doing that, we were able to then start to move people into more affinity groups that we knew they're going to work close together in a lot of different meetings and have more interaction and engagement. And so one fateful day, we put a chart on the wall of the office, the as is, and then we had post-it notes on offices, and we started to talk about, hey, this is what we're going to do to bring us into closer working groups so that you don't have to walk all the way across the office building to get to the person you're going to work closely with. And so we're going to move people around. But let me start with this. Let me start by saying that the four senior leaders are moving into the old speed up storage room, and they all like, and it was not in Mahogany Row. It was in the area where
Yeah, it was
everyone
a
else was.
demotion. It felt like a demotion to
They
other
saw, yeah,
people.
it was like you guys are self-imposing a demotion.
Right,
Um,
right. You get the
and
lower office instead of the higher office.
right.
Yeah.
And so then we told them our offices are big and they're perfect for meetings.
Hmm.
And I think you remember one of the meeting rooms, the chief operating officer's room, we made into kind of low, like seating, casual seating, so that people can meet more in a casual setting. And so we made all these conference rooms, and then we started to veil where everyone else was sitting, and nobody complained, mainly
Yeah,
because
well, it's hard to
they,
complain whenever you've just seen the four top executives decide to demote themselves in office
right.
space. So first of all, I just love that story. You know, the details, when you watch authentic leaders, they have the actual details of what they did. You know, it's a fairly simple story. It's we moved offices, we increased conference room spaces, and it worked well. But what's fun about what I heard from you last time, I just heard it again, there are actual details about who was sitting
Hmm.
where when, and the one that I can imagine and just visualize. So for the people that are listening, you know, the post-its that have the names of the people, you know, they're kind of curling up. And
Right, right.
when post-its are always curling up because they're temporary, they're not permanent. And offices are not a permanent thing. They're not something you
Hmm.
own. They're not an entitlement.
Right,
It's not your office. It's actually a space that you're using.
right,
And here your
right.
post-it goes and it's curling up, and we
Yeah,
might change them again, and we might move again, and
right,
we might move again. And
right.
then for those that are listening, you know, the part of the story that just, you know, you decided to go first. So we're going to be sacrificing some things. When we do this, we're going to lose some things and gain some things, and the gains
Yeah,
are going to be higher than the
right,
losses. But one of the
right.
things that we're going to just admit and acknowledge is that we're going first, and we're going to move from here to here. And we think we're going to do better there than we're going to do over there.
Yeah,
And so we think that together we'll be better than we were whenever we had mahogany.
yeah, yeah.
Powerful story. And Mark, you know, there's so many people. Those are things that I call cultural enablers, or, you know, they're basically breaking some of the fabric that was holding the distance between two groups. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah,
Right,
offices hold distance, dress codes
right.
hold distance.
That's
And
right.
we have to find a visual way in a
Yeah,
transformation like that to say,
right.
this is a different value set.
Hmm.
We want more from you, and we're going to give more.
Right. Yeah.
And we want to see you thriving. Love it.
Well, I love your story. You know, when you were at Cambridge and one of the first things you changed, I love that story as well. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes it's that small action that makes such a big statement.
yeah. When I stepped into the role of president, I did tell Mark my first big decision was to turn the dress code in the offices to jeans, because all the people
Yeah.
in the plant wore jeans and everybody in the
Right.
office had to wear slacks.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, I don't feel any better than them, and I don't feel any worse than them. I'm just one of them. And so
Right.
I came home, talked to the kids, you know, got their input. Literally, they were my advisors at that time. I said, listen, do you think this is a crazy idea? They said, well, it's not the first decision that every president makes, but I think it's good. Go for it.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but there were 1,000 little ways that we
That's
changed
right.
little things to make it one group instead of two. And I saw that down in Dallas and Fort Worth whenever I visited your plant. So thank you for that share.
Yeah.
Tell me any other secrets that you find. You are a natural teacher coach. That's how you're wired. You love to share and lift up and encourage. Tell me any other things that you think that the folks would like to hear about from a leadership perspective that you find important.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that we went first, right? So from a leader standpoint, even the office changes, what you do is so much more powerful of a teacher than oftentimes what you say. In fact, if what you do is different than what you say, you lose a lot of integrity. And so, small things, I think I was telling you about the small action of showing up to work every day and parking backwards the car into a parking spot. And where previously the previous leadership of the company had designated parking spots with names on them, I stopped parking there and I would park the furthest away. And every morning people saw that I would park the furthest away and I would back into it. And after doing that for a couple of weeks, someone finally came up to me and said, Mark, why do you do that? Why do you park so far away? And why do you park backwards? And I told them, the reason I park backwards is because it's safer. And my first thought when I get to work should be about safety. And I want that to be a trigger for me personally to think about the day with safety in mind. And so backing up does that. I can show you research about how much safer it is to back your car into a parking spot than forward. And this is before rear cameras.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
it's pretty safe with rear cameras. And then I said, secondly, I park far away. One, because having a parking spot, I don't want to be different. And also it gives me opportunity to look at the back of the plant. And I often find that when I go to a plant, I like to go to the back to see if it's as clean as the front. And typically, and you know this, Mark, when you go to visit a plant and all the trash and disorganization is in the back, you know that that's not a part of their culture. 5S is not a part of their culture. It's just right. And so
Right.
I always said, I want to park back there because I care about the back as much as I care about the front. And so that started to get around, and it's more is caught than taught. You do and you lead with your actions. And then they wonder, why is he doing that? And when they get curious, then you can teach. Before they get curious, it's very hard to teach. So yeah, those are some cool things that we get to do.
Yeah, so much gold there. People don't learn from us about what we say, but in what we do. And I think about just talk a lot less and do the things that need to be done a lot more, and then people will follow you in those actions. And I think that you keep saying that I know this. It's so interesting because while I might know it, I can mess up. I can mess up so often on this. And, I have a safety first training background, zero defect, zero. I mean, I am a fairly practiced safety expert. I speak at safety conferences at that level. And what's interesting is when I do it and then I go out and I drive as fast as I can into the parking spot and I rush and I park sideways, partially because my brain is all on this next activity. It is completely not in line with my desired intent for the safety of the culture. And so if I say safety is number one, and then I drive fast into the parking lot on my phone and park sideways, I will destroy my credibility, my integrity, and I won't be able to build what I want to build. I won't be able to help serve. I won't be able to have that kind of culture that I love. So actions matter. You've just painted a picture of what it looks like to care well, to act with integrity, and then build trust over time. And so if you're listening, if you have not made a trip around your plant to look at the backside, look at to meet with the mail room, to talk to the folks on the front line, to be walking where most leaders think that isn't the place to walk, you will see things you need to see. You will meet people you need to meet. You'll build relationships you need to build. And it will show and demonstrate the care that you want to instill in that culture.
One of the other things I did early on is in Fort Worth in the summer, it's super hot and we didn't have a conditioned space. Remember we talked about you guys about maybe helping us to condition
That's right. Yeah.
the shop floor. And so in the summer, I would go get a Subway sandwich and I'd go into where everyone else was having lunch and I'd have lunch with them. And at first, they didn't know what to think of it. There's like, you guys never come eat with us. After a while, they started to actually sit next to me. And I remember one of the guys, you build a relationship. And again, you're not there to force yourself on them. You're there to be with them, be seen as wanting to know and understand and then to care about their situation. And so finally, one guy came over and had the courage to say, hey, Mark, one of the issues, we don't have a lot of time for lunch. And a lot of us need to heat up our lunch, but we only have 2 microwaves. And so some of us have very little time to eat. Would it be possible for you to add more microwaves? And I was like, yeah, that's absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
After lunch, I went back in and I said, guys, let's get some microwaves out there.
Yeah.
It's not expensive.
Right.
And it'll make our employees' lives better. And so we did. And, you get to find things like that when
Yeah,
you
you
put
do.
yourself in their situation.
Yeah.
And that had such a huge impact. Just the fact that management listened and they actually gave them more microwaves.
Right. $200 worth of
Yeah,
microwaves could
right,
make a huge impact.
right.
Well, I mean, we could talk forever. I do want to acknowledge, we keep these pretty short. The one thing
Uh-huh.
is, I know that you are in the middle. You've actually finished up one role and one transition and
Uh-huh.
one transformation, and you're ready for one more
Yeah.
run at that. And I love that. I love that you want to serve in that capacity. And so, if
Uh-huh.
people are listening and they want to get a hold of you, if they have opportunities for president level roles that want to lead, tell me, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is just to call me. I don't hold my phone number as sacred.
Okay.
So my
Do you
phone
want to go ahead
number,
and do you want
yeah,
to give it?
sure, it's 309-281-9226. That's my mobile number. You can text or call.
That's awesome.
I love more likely probably a text before a call would be good because I get so much spam. I usually don't take calls if I don't know who it is. But if
Yeah,
I
no
get a text
problem.
saying this is who I am, I would definitely pick up the phone.
Well, it can give you a full commendation. I would love to have you. If I had plants, if I had businesses, I would absolutely love to have you running them. It'd be so
Thank
freaking
you.
cool to work together in that capacity. And I just love how you lead. Tell me, go back now.
Mm-hmm.
One last question. You go back
Yeah.
to this younger self, you're stepping into the new role. You can either do it at whatever state, but I really like the first president role. That
Mm-hmm.
first step up to the full leadership role where you have
Mm-hmm.
all the full responsibility. When you went
Yeah.
into that first role, think about back then, what would you tell yourself? You've got the wisdom that you have now, and you're speaking to your younger self. What would you want that younger self to hear?
It's a great question. I've spoken about it mainly because it's an indictment on myself. I think early on in my career, I set goals, and it was Zig Ziglar who said, "Write down your goals." And so I did. I wrote down my goals, and one of my goals was to be CEO before I turned 40, and it was my goal. And so I wanted to accomplish that. And sure enough, by 39, I became CEO working with a private equity company, taking ownership of kind of a roll up, about $50 million, 400 people, colleagues, and kind of a cool thing to do. Thinking back, it really was about myself. It was about my goal, and it was about, how can I exercise my knowledge? How can I exercise my passions? The things that it was very self-centered. It was eventually taken away, and thankfully, it was taken away because that's when I read this book um, about purpose-driven life
Mm.
by Pastor Rick Warren. And the first sentence in that is, "It's not about me." And just reading that sentence really kind of hit me in the back of the head. And as I delved into that book more and more, I truly understood that my failure in thinking about leadership was that leadership is something for me. And I think now I have a different view on that. I think leadership is about others.
Mm.
It's not about self. And I think it's about being in that role of a leader to be able to have a greater impact on other people and really using and respecting that leadership role so that you can benefit others. And I think it does take an abundance mindset to be able to do that. That when it's not about you and it's about how you use a platform, a leadership platform, or even a title to be able to benefit others, it's just so rewarding and it's so much more fun. And so, yeah, more lately, after that one experience, I really started to change my tune and
Mm.
focus on how do I use my position? How do I use the talents that I have? And how do I benefit others and benefit the organization? And let's be driven in by just making it, you know, better for others, to benefit others. And that in itself creates the biggest win for you, way bigger than being recognized as a CEO or being known for a title, being able to share that leadership with others.
Yeah.
And that's if I could go back to my young self, I would just slap myself and say, don't make that mistake.
Yeah. Well, you would say turn faster, turn earlier from
Yeah.
me to we. It's such a beautiful story. I hear it over and over, and I have experienced it myself. It's
Uh-huh.
this idea that for the first period of time, whatever that period is, it's all about me.
Uh-huh.
And there was a shift in your life that made it all about we, all about us, all about them, all about serving others. And that
Right.
shift changed everything for you. That one
Right.
single mind shift changed
Yes.
everything, and you would have changed that earlier
Yes.
if you could have. That's what I
Yes.
hear. Yeah.
That's right.
So it is so cool to see. I don't know exact age, but 15, 20 years later, that you're actually sitting there and
Uh-huh.
you have that much experience of a we leadership model
Uh-huh.
on top of the early parts that gets you to the first CEO role. And it is
Yeah.
a beautiful gift to see and witness. And so it's a powerful one. My hope for everybody that listens, that you have as many days on this earth leading with a we or an others focus. So if it's only one day, that's awesome because it's more than some get. If it's a year or if it's 15 or if it's 25 or whenever you can make that shift. Mark says make it earlier. If I were to go back earlier in my life, I would have said make that earlier, make that shift
Yeah.
earlier, Mark. And
Right.
so if you're listening, make that shift. And if you're listening, thank you so much for just pouring in, listening, and also everything you do to encourage leadership growth in your own self, in your companies, to build that in. And if you want to get a hold of Mark, you've got his number earlier. We'll put it in the show notes as well. And then if you want to get a hold of me, you can do so at Encouraging Leaders. I would be happy to spend some time with you and just understand how we might encourage you. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Mark, for your time.
It's been amazing. Thank you, Mark. Take care.